Hi, I'm Dave Slater. I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and this is my Brick Rodeo 2025 build. It's Run Indy Run, and it's a large-scale Indiana Jones figure running from the Boulder, trying to recapture the scene from the first movie.
Yeah, and as you can see, an incredible movement element to this build here. So take us through kind of the planning process for this and how the build came together for you.
Sure. So the first step was to design the running feature of Indiana. And then once I had him fairly squared away, I decided he's got to be running from something. So Lego came out with the globe set. So I basically reskinned it with a different color and came up with a mechanism to roll the ball. And then once I had him running and the ball going, I wanted to make the earth move around him to make it look like it's got some momentum. So I designed the track system on his left and his right. And then after I had what I'll call the top bits put together, I started designing out the sides. So I've got some moving spiders, all the spears go in and out, just to give some more visual interest to the sides of the build.
Yeah, which is just incredible. So no matter what angle you look at this from, there's movement and there's something going on. Even the subtleness with the spiders and the spears. So what is the inside of this like? What does it take to kind of get all that movement going?
It's a mess. There's 4 power functions XL motors that are all driving basically one central gear string. So that's why, like, when his foot hits the ground, you can actually see it tracks with the same speed as the ground. So it looks like it's contacting and moving. And the only way to do that is to make the 2 tracks on the left and right, his body and the ball, all driven by the same mechanism. So there's a lot of weight, there's a lot of torque. That's why it sort of moves in slow motion, even though I'm really sending those gears.
Yeah. And obviously the standout here is Indiana Jones and the ball. So maybe start with Indiana Jones.
Sure.
And kind of the character building approach here. How did he come together?
Sure. So I had built something relatively similar a couple years ago, but it was very sort of fragile and didn't really work very well. So I started looking to what Lego was doing for their larger scale figurines, and there's a lot of other people at the show who are doing this kind of scale. So I sort of took the teachings that they were given and saying, hey, I wonder if I could make this articulated and give it some more movement. And that scale basically drove the scale of the rest of the build. Once I had his height and I knew the size of the ball, I just worked backwards from there.
And then the ball itself is quite large here, so what is the internal structure like on that, kind of keeping that together?
Sure, so it's very, very similar to the globe set that Lego came out with a couple years ago. I took a couple elements out that it didn't need because I wasn't putting the different continents on it. And then I just had to track down dark gray parts to replace the parts they were using in the globe. And I'm going to stop it for a minute just to show you how it works. Yeah. So one of the things I found fascinating about Lego's approach to the globe is that they're using these 6x6 panels all the way around the central column. And what that gives you is it gives you a gap that's exactly 6 studs wide all the way around. So if you mate that with these panels, it's actually riding in a track, but it's underneath the road surface or the surface of the path. So these wheels are motorized, and this just spins in place. And it'll never get off track because it's always within these 2 gaps.
No, that works really well. And then going to the outside of the build again here, it's really nicely decorated. So you mentioned the spiders and the spears, but what were some of the other elements you wanted to include on the outside?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to do the spears because I think that's the thing that people are most familiar with. When he pushes down on the foot plates, the spears shoot out. And I knew I had not a lot of room, but I knew I had room in between the tracks going around, and I made small cam systems that just moved them in and out. And I figured, all right, I got to design individual faces. So there's a couple doubles, but most of the faces are unique and individual to themselves. And then the spider was a happy accident. I had, there are a bunch of axles that are coming out in motion, and I wanted to do like a rock feature in the middle, and I was like, I've got enough cracks in the rocks where I could put a track in there and then put a sort of a vertical track as opposed to a horizontal track.
Yeah, and I think it turned out really nice. Looking at the Indiana Jones figure again, it's really cool to see like the hands are kind of the large figure hands that you used on there.
That's exactly right. So, I was taking advantage of the sort of sloped, larger macaroni pieces that they came out with, and the hands just worked out great. I mean, they fit into the same scale. Mm-hmm. I really want to show you guys how he works. If I can stop it and take him off. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to completely disassemble, but I think it's actually pretty neat how this comes together. So all of his motion is driven by these two lift arms moving back and forth. So he himself is articulated just by moving his arms or moving his legs. It's geared up in his body to move his arms left and right and his head back and forth. So as these tracks move backwards and forwards, it's moving the bottom of his leg backwards and forwards, giving it the impression that, you know, he's got something motorized within him. But no, he's just a bunch of different gear systems all up inside of his body.
Yeah, so even the figure is mechanical, which is very unique.
Yeah, in fact, at the show yesterday in the afternoon, for whatever reason, it wasn't moving. So I was actually just taking him off and sort of running him in place like this, and it sort of gives the same effect.
And one of the most difficult parts of a character build is always the face. So what were the elements that you kind of used there?
Absolutely. So there's a builder. He was on LEGO Masters. His name's Moto. I'm sure you're familiar with him. He did some large-scale figurines like this, and I took a lot of inspiration from how he designed the face because it's a 3-stud wide face. I knew I wanted to get sideburns, the beard, and I wanted him to have like a scared expression because he's running away from a giant boulder. So that took a little bit of doing, and then his hat was particularly difficult just because there's a lot of complex shapes on his hat, and to try and do that at this scale that probably took the most amount of time. His face came together relatively quickly because Moto had done something very similar, and I appreciate him for that. The hat took a lot longer, but yeah, I think it came together really well.
So I know here over the weekend at Brick Rodeo, the build has been running off and on, some struggles. So what are kind of the biggest struggles you've been overcoming to kind of keep this running regularly?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So the biggest struggle, frankly, is that I'm pushing a lot of weight. The ball itself has so much weight, even though I tried to make it as light as possible. There's so much mass that's moving backwards and forwards, and the track system also takes on a lot of that weight. So the difficulty I'm running into is I can either run it for a really long time, very, very, very slowly, or I can run it at the speed that you guys saw it for short bursts. So I'll see people coming down this aisle, and as they turn the corner, I'll turn it on so that they get the full effect.
Yeah. When you bring this to a show like Brick Rodeo, do you just bring this all as one piece? How does that transport and trying to make sure everything doesn't get messed up internally?
Yeah, so let me show you. So the funny thing is that the base travels on its own, and the biggest challenge was trying to transport this without it falling apart. It's relatively stable, but what I found out is that Lego's globe, let me pull this out, is actually the exact dimensions of an official kickball. So I bought an official kickball, and it fits perfectly in this secure box, and it gives me surfaces on all 4 sides. So when I pack up at the end of this thing, I can stack things on top of it, and I don't have to worry about that thing falling apart. So it's just trying to come up with clever ways of, I can either make my own box or, I just took a measurement of that, and I was like, I wonder if there's like a sports ball that's about the same size, and it's 1-to-1. It's perfect.
Yeah. No, that is fantastic. So do you have plans for more of these type of sort of kinetic sculpture type builds like this in the future and kind of building out on the moving builds?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think I've only been to a handful of these shows, but the most attention and the coolest things are the things that are in motion. Yeah. And I've always thought, like, man, if only I could bring something that was sort of captures somebody's eye and they sort of like tune into it and they try to see what's moving. Like, I think most people here notice Indy first, then they see the boulder, and then they see all the details on the sides are moving. So what I really want to do is another build like this, where there's like one main motion and then a bunch of little things that you can sort of like get in and see the details of.
Fantastic work. Thank you so much for bringing this out to the show and for taking us through the build today.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.